Have you ever wondered whether love is really just about feelings, or whether society decides who we love and how we love? Today, we're going to explore that question through three famous English novels. At first glance, these novels may seem like classic love stories, but are they really only about romance? Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. Today, I will be discussing how romantic love is portrayed in three important English novels: Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, and White Sargasso Sea by Jane Rees. Although these novels were written in different periods, they are closely connected because they explore relationships between men and women within societies dominated by patriarchal values. An interesting detail is that through letters, many women express what they cannot say aloud. Before analyzing the theme of love, let us briefly summarize each work. Be careful because there are spoilers. Pride and Prejudice tells the story of Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. At first, both characters judge each other unfairly, but through personal growth and understanding, spoiler alerts, they eventually fall in love and marry. At first, it seems like the perfect romantic story, but is this really only about love, or is social class just as important? At first glance, it may sound like just another enemies to lovers story, although if social media had existed in the 19th century, I'm sure some people would have called Elizabeth a gold digger and Darcy a walking red flag. Jane Eyre follows the life of Jane, an orphan who becomes a governess and falls in love with Edward Rochester, the wealthy owner of Thornfield Hall. Now again, spoiler alert, their relationship faces many obstacles before they can finally be together. Jane fights for love, but she also fights for something even more important: her independence. Can there really be love without equality? White Sargasso Sea is written as a prequel to Jane Eyre. It is a story of Antoinette Causeway, the woman who later becomes known as Bertha Mason, Rochester's first wife. The novel explores her unhappy marriage, her loss of identity, and the effects of colonialism and male domination. Antoinette constantly challenges the expectations of a strict and moralistic British society, and instead of being understood, she is often labeled as irrational or mad. So, what do these three very different stories actually have in common? More than we might expect. These three novels are connected because they examine love, marriage, and the position of women in society. However, they also reveal what unequal relationships between men and women often were or are like. One of the most important similarities is that men usually have more power than women. In all three novels, male characters possess greater economic, social, and legal authority. In White Sargasso Sea, Rochester controls Antoinette almost completely. He questions her identity, ignores her feelings, and ultimately decides her fate by taking her away from her home and confining her in the attic. Antoinette has very little control over her own life. In Jane Eyre, Rochester also holds power over Jane because he is wealthier, older, and socially superior. Although Jane is independent and intelligent, she must constantly defend her dignity and equality within the relationship. Today, we'd probably describe some of his behavior as several red flags. In Pride and Prejudice, Darcy does not dominate Elizabeth in the same extreme way, but he still benefits from a society that gives men greater freedom and authority. Elizabeth's future depends largely on marriage because women have limited opportunities to support themselves financially. For example, the inheritance of Mr. Bennet was given to the closest men of the family, not to his daughters. It makes us wonder, can a relationship be truly based on love when one person holds almost all the power? Another important aspect is the role of women within relationships. Women are often expected to be obedient, attractive, and marriageable. Their value is frequently linked to their ability to find a husband. This is especially clear in Pride and Prejudice, where the Bennet sisters face constant pressure to marry. Since the family estate cannot be inherited by daughters, marriage becomes almost a necessity for the economic security. Women who remain unmarried are often seen as failures or burdens to their families. Today, we often think of marriage as a personal choice, but for many women in these novels, it was also a matter of survival. Would these women have made the same choices if they had been financially independent? A similar idea appears in Jane Eyre. Jane's options are limited because she's a woman without wealth or family connections. Her social position makes her vulnerable and dependent on employment provided by others. In White Sargasso Antoinette's future is also determined through marriage. Rather than being treated as an independent individual, she becomes an object within arrangements made by others. Her tragedy is not only that she loses her marriage, it is that she slowly loses her own identity. The image of women is also strongly conditioned by social expectations. Female characters are judged according to beauty, morality, obedience, and respectability. Men, however, are often allowed greater freedom. Antoinette is portrayed as irrational and unstable, partly because she refuses to fit the role expected of her. Jane is admired for her morality, self-control, and resilience. Elizabeth is valued because she combines intelligence with social grace. These differences show how women are seen according to society's standards. Even today, are women and men judged by the same standards when it comes to appearance and behavior? Another striking similarity is the age difference between the couples. In both Jane Eyre and White Sargasso Sea, the male partner is significantly older than the female protagonist. This age gap reinforces the imbalance of power because men possess more experience, authority, and social influence. This raises another interesting question. When there is a significant difference in age, experience, and social position, can a relationship ever be completely equal? Furthermore, in all three novels, men ultimately make many of the most important decisions affecting women's lives. Rochester decides Antoinette's destiny and attempts to shape Jane's. At this point, Rochester isn't just a husband, he's acting like the CEO of everyone else's life. Even in Pride and Prejudice, we can see that by the way how Mr. Darcy moves away Miss de Vinci from Jane due to her social status and her family reputation. Notice that love in these novels is rarely just between two people. Family, money, gender, and social expectations are always present. These novels, therefore, reveal a society in which women often had limited autonomy. As they grew older without marrying, they were increasingly considered a burden to their families because they lacked financial independence and social status. Marriage was not only associated with love, but also with economic survival. To conclude, Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, and White Sargasso Sea present different stories of romantic love, but they share common themes of gender inequality, power, and social expectations. The relationships portrayed in these novels show how women were often defined by marriage and controlled by patriarchal structures. Although society has changed significantly since these novels were written, some of these stereotypes still influence relationships today. Women continue to face expectations regarding appearance, age, marriage, and family roles, while power imbalances can still exist in romantic relationships. By reading these novels, we can better understand the origins of these social attitudes and reflect how they continue to shape modern ideas about love and gender. Perhaps the details have changed, but some of the questions remain surprisingly familiar. So, before we finish, I would like to leave you with one final question. Do you think that modern romantic relationships are truly based on equality? Or do traditional expectations about gender roles, power, age differences, and marriage still influence the way people choose their partners and behave in relationships today? I'd love to read what you think. Do these novels still reflect today's society? Or have we moved beyond these ideas? Share your opinion and experiences in the comments below. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.